Hello, and welcome to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, the owner of Meraki Media Management. The End in Mind is a place where we come to share stories, tips, and strategies of many entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, and just some people that aren't willing to live the traditional lifestyle. We talk about how to live outside of the box today and how to incorporate what really is important in your life to keep that end goal always in mind. Again, if you would like to reach out to me in any type of way, you can find me on Instagram at Meraki_media_management. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks so much and enjoy our show. Hey everybody, welcome back to The End in Mind. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am here with a wonderful guest today, Ilia. I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Mama. I'm so excited to be here.
We're going to have so much fun. So Ilia is the owner of Spiritually Curious, one of my most favorite spiritually awareness businesses out there right now. She is very well known for identifying patterns within her VIP days. And I also find that her overall spirituality explanation is much more in alignment with how I believe and what I believe spirituality is. So as we've gotten to get to know each other over these past few months, I thought it would be fitting to have her on to share more about what she does with you guys. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So what do I do, right? Basically at the core of what I do is I help people embrace their spirit as a tool and a lens to identify patterns, like you said, but most importantly, to work through those patterns, to not only see them, but to use your spirit, your energetic being as a new lens, as a new way of seeing how you move through the world, how you move through your relationships, how you move through your life, and anchoring into that as like a decision-making helper in your life, not just something that's outside of you, something that actually is within you and can help you make decisions. So I talk a lot about trusting your intuition because it's a real thing. And that's a big bulk of what I do is at its core is helping people trust what they already know to be true.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love it. I always talk about intuition here on The End in Mind too. So where a lot of our listeners, I'll say, before they get on to content write or message, settle into how they're feeling, that energy I feel like is so important for everything that we do, which I really learned once I started working with you. It really pressed that forward, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that your listeners could do and they could do today is something called channel writing. And you literally just open up we'll say your energetic channel, and you put your pen to paper or to type on your keyboard, however you feel best aligned doing it. And you just sit and you just start typing, or you just start writing, and whatever flows, and you just let it kind of go. And before you know it, your spirit, if you will, is talking through you and is answering a question that you maybe write down a question on a piece of paper and then just let it flow. And you'll be amazed what comes up. And that's a really, it's a fun and easy way to connect to your spirit if you're big into copywriting.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Everyone needs to do that today, because us as business owners, which we'll get into, which is kind of our first question for you as well, we get stumped. There's so many outside factors, especially when we're just starting. A lot of our listeners are early on in their business journey, and it's overwhelming. There's so
very overwhelming. Yes.
They have opinions. They want you to be successful. They're like, try this. A lot of them are trying to be helpful, but it gets, especially as us empaths, which most of my listeners tend to be empaths as well. So we pick up on all of that energy. We want to, as you and I were talking about earlier, make them happy and just see that through when we get a recommendation. And when we don't, then we end up normally like beating ourselves up and feeling guilty. So what would be, one of your reasons for explaining why starting a business is so scary? Does it have to do with a lot of that part of it?
Yeah, it absolutely has to do with a lot of it. And I think, when we start a business, I think we underestimate the amount of time that you spend alone. And I think it's a lot of decision making on your own. And we are creatures of community. We are creatures that need people around us. So we don't realize that when we start a business, we're going to be making a lot of decisions by ourselves. And I think the really important thing for us to understand is to find a community that are already in business. Find business owners that have been in it a little bit longer than you, even if it's just a year longer, even if it's, 2 years longer. It doesn't have to be someone that has 10, 12 years of experience behind them. You probably want someone that's a little bit newer that remembers what it's like to begin. Because what you need to begin and to maintain your business is different than what you need towards like a few years out and a few years after that. But I think we get caught up in asking the wrong people. And those people, if they're not business owners, they're probably coming from a place of fear that they haven't been able to get past. So they hear your question and they're like, well, I could never do that. Well, yeah, they could never do it. That's why they don't have a business. And that's fine. And that's perfect. That's perfect for their path. But if your path is to own a business, make sure you're asking and seeking out the opinions of people that share that same passion or that same drive. Because if not, you're going to land in fear of other people's fear, and that's going to just ignite your own, and you're just going to keep swimming in your own fear, because we're all scared to do it. We're all scared, like, am I going to fail? Am I going to? But just try it. You're not going to know until you at least try, because if you don't try, then you already failed.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I feel like that was actually a great lens shift right there, for the listeners. It's like sometimes the people that maybe you're calling to and asking for advice from, I actually feel comfortable sharing this. So my mom and I are very close, and my mom has a background in business, but she started like working with my grandfather, probably 40 years ago. So the way business runs now is so different.
And my guess is that's a brick and mortar, and a brick and mortar is drastically different than an online business. And I personally have been navigating that since the pandemic, since closing a brick and mortar location and going fully online. So the skills, the things that you need are drastically different when you have like a physical location, not to mention all those years ago. Right? Like, so that's a different lens that she's looking through. And I'm certain she has a ton of valuable, more global information that will be helpful, but the more narrowed down that you need right now is probably less specific from her.
It's less specific. Exactly. And it's like, even when it comes to hiring people and how you said like the brick and mortar approach, there's so many other things that come along with that I'm like, we don't have to deal with that at all. We just have to pay for our website. Like, it's really simple. And she's like, wow, that's so different, but having that compare and contrast at times was difficult in the beginning for me to discern, like, is this her giving her opinion, or is that something that I should do? Should I actually take action? So it was really hard. And a lot of, missteps may have come not from her opinions, but just taking in all of the opinions of everyone around me, early on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you have to also ask people, and I know a lot of your listeners are empaths, so it's really important that you ask people that align with your energy. If you're asking someone something and you feel like they're saying no when they're giving you the answer, don't ask them again. Like, if you're like, oh, something just doesn't feel right, they're not your person to seek advice from in this area of your life. So So I would encourage, your listeners to move on and to find someone else that when you talk to them, you get super excited. Like, one of the reasons why I work with you is because when we are together, we get so excited. Like, you get me so excited about what we're talking about. I think I get you so excited about what we're
Yeah.
working on. And it's like, okay, like, that's how I want to build my team. Like, I want to be around people that we are feeding off of each other. And it's not to say, like, sometimes you're not going to have a courageous conversation, or there's something that you have to discuss that comes up. But when you're in alignment with someone's energy, you can do that in a really heart-centered kind way. And I think that's like another thing that comes into business ownership at the beginning as well, because there's a lot of old school techniques that I don't think are aligned so much anymore in the way that we do business. And some of them, we can say masculine or feminine, and some of them have this more like aggressive undertone, and that works for some people. But if that doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean you can't own a business. Like, you don't have to bite everyone that you're working with in order to get them to work with you, right? And I think that's a real old school belief that sometimes you'll meet people that are like, no, boop, 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 boop. And if you're not doing it that way, then you're not made out for this, and it's like, no way, man. You can create your own path. You can run a business your own way, and you can do it from a place of kindness.
Yes. And like integrity of who you are. Exactly.
Yes.
You said, I love that. And I think that could be honestly one of the biggest takeaways for our listeners today. Like, we're just starting, but that was so on point. And I think settling into what feels good for you, like, even I'm going to kind of take it in a different direction. But when we started Meraki, I was getting a lot of masculine advice just from who I was, reaching out to, coaches that I hired. And it started to feel really negative, exactly how you said. Like, if I wouldn't reach a goal that I had set for myself in XYZ program, I would beat myself up instead of feeling like, oh, well, I still got, 5 sales. And that's a huge accomplishment. It's my first time running a course. Like, no one even knew about it before then. It's a huge accomplishment. And then I started to realize, okay, well, it really comes down to maybe the people that I'm working with, because they don't see that as an accomplishment. It was like, that mindset shift was huge for me. And then once I started surrounding myself with people like you and Nicole, who's also been on our show, and Susan, building this community, it started to just trickle down. I think even through like my other clients, they started to see a change in me, and, maybe they ended up parting ways with us, and that was okay, because I felt like in alignment with you guys and my people,
Yeah. And sometimes, that's the nature of energy, right? Like, if it has to keep moving. So if there's something that's not in alignment, they're taking up space. So if those clients are taking up space, sometimes you have to allow them to fall away so that your dream clients come in, right? So that, like, the people that you want to work with do have the space to come in. And at the time, it may feel like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lost someone. But it's like, no, like, there's another door coming. Like, wait till that one comes, and it's going to be amazing. But if you didn't have the space cleared, then you couldn't take on that client. And so there's beauty in what you think is like not working, and then it comes in and you're like, oh, that's why that happened.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. And I feel like that, I've always believed that, but I have to say this, before working with you, before reading your copy, before being a part of some of your workshops, and really seeing like how you explain it, I really never settled in, like to the point where I was willing to take the risk to see it happen. Like, coming from that moment where I think it takes a certain point when you get to business, where you feel so secure in your offer that it's not as external, and it's more, that integrity of knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and how it is, you don't have to rely on everyone else to tell you, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And it takes a minute to get there, because at the beginning, it's like you have this idea, and it's like you're adding all this, all these ideas to this like bowl of soup, and you're just kind of spinning it around, spinning it around. And then there are parts that kind of float up to the surface. It's like, alphabet soup or something. And it like floats up to the surface and it shows you like, this is where you shine and this is what you get the most excited about. So that's what you start doing. And the rest of the soup is great, but you don't actually need that anymore. So I say, no matter what part you're at, especially at the beginning, like put a lot of stuff in your soup and see what lights up your soul. Because when you get excited about it, you're going to get other people excited about it. And then they're going to want to work with you. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? If you feel that way about it, then you get more clear and more clarity. And you're like, no, this is what I do. This is what I like to work on and who I like to work with. So at the beginning, if it feels soupy and you're not sure, like just keep going, because that is part of the journey. You are figuring it out. And just like, that happened for me, that happened for you, and it happens over and over and over again. So as you up level in your business and as you change, you're going to find yourself at that same spot that you were a few years ago, and it's going to feel super scary as you take the leap to the next level of your business, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was scary, and then you get over it, and you go through to the next level. So it happens many times, but at the beginning it just feels really messy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was so well said. I love that. And I think this actually lends well, like, how did you get into this line of work? Because I know that we talk a lot about your family and your grandfather, and I'd love to hear more about that too, if you're willing to share, of course.
Yeah, of course. I am an open book. I like to share everything so anyone can take any little piece that resonates for them, because it doesn't matter how far along you are in this, like you need to know that it's possible, and you need to know that it isn't always easy. Like don't look at someone who's further along and be like, oh, like it takes time to get there, So I like to share about all the parts. But yeah, so I like to joke that I started my journey as a socially acceptable healer. So I was a social worker for 10 years. Before that, I was a very intuitive child. I was like a feeler, I would like go into a room and I could feel the room and all of these different things that would happen to me. And it scared me a lot. So I pushed all of that down and I went into, being a social worker. And I did that for so many years until what your intuition does is it keeps knocking and knocking, and then it knocks harder and harder until you listen. And that's essentially what happened for me. And it started me down a path of studying Reiki and energy work and your chakras. And I've studied with shamans and mediums, and you name it. I have probably a certification in it. I went back to school for massage so that I could understand more about the body. My trail has been super windy and full of courses, because there is no master's degree in spirituality. I'm sure that's coming though, because science is changing everything, which is wonderful. But I created my own path through my own self-discovery, through my own desire to understand more about our spirit. And really, the first thing that I think happened for me is when I started noticing the connection between my clients' emotional well-being and their physical body, and that there was the same pain for the same emotion in more than one of my clients. And then I was trying to understand, and this was when I was a social worker. So I didn't really understand it. So that's what led me into studying Reiki and energy work and meditation and breath work. And I started bringing that to my clients, like breath work, because I couldn't bring them anything more than that at the moment. And then I noticed changes within them, and they couldn't quite put their finger on it, but something was different, and I over time, I realized that what was different was they were connecting with something bigger than them. They were starting to believe in something bigger than them just from doing breath work, or just from beginning to understand that there is this bigger connection and having these bigger conversations. So that spiraled me down a huge path of personal self-discovery, and then brought me into studying under some of the like greatest teachers I think in the world, like Brian Weiss, who does past life regression therapy. And I encourage anyone who's curious about that to read Many Lives, Many Masters. That book was one of my first in my journey, and it absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. And that's probably the first book that I read that began to open the door when I was a social worker. And I was like, what is this? Like, what? And I just kept peeling away the onion after that. And then I eventually went and studied under him to learn past life regression therapy. And it's something I do now, but it started 20 years ago. Oh my gosh, but it took me a long time until I like stepped out, changed careers, left and started my own business. And I mean, there's years in between this time frame. So it wasn't like I read the book and then next year I started my own practice, there are years in this story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's also good to mention. Like, I would love to go into, if you're comfortable talking about that scientific part of spirituality that we were touching on before we started recording a little too. And I think, it's so good to mention that this is all a journey, because I know for me, like, I started on this journey, it really feels like in quarantine. Like, it was at that point in my life where I knew I needed something. I wasn't able to leave the house as much as I normally was to kind of find that connection to something out there. And it had to become internal. And I knew I had no other choice. Like, it was like literally my body was shutting down. Like, I felt so much pain physically. And then I started meditating, which was like the first thing I ever did. And it really changed my life. And then it was like, it just started to snowball. Then working with someone like yourself and learning more about the real connection, because I was talked about this all the time when I was younger, like The Secret and all these really intuitive things. But when you work with someone like Ilia, and I want to explain this for the listeners, it makes it real. Like, you actually, it's no longer a construct that's just like, oh, spirituality is out there in the universe, we'll eventually reach it. It's actually here within all of us. And that's something that Ilia stresses, which is why I love working with her and hearing her talk about this, because it's so powerful when you explain it like that. It's innately within everyone. And it kind of makes us all feel, at least for me, equal, like we're all equals on this level of spirituality. And it's kind of nice to know that,
Yeah, 100%. We are all equals. We're all vibrating at different frequencies, but we are still vibrating within that oneness, if you will, that we are. And I always like to tell my clients to stop reading about it and start feeling about it. Start really understanding that this is within you. Like, you can read another book about it, or you can sit down and start practicing. You can sit down and start actually meditating, because reading the book about meditation is not meditating.
Yeah.
It's just another roadblock to be like, well, I'm going to read another book about it. No,
right.
Start practicing. Like, you're going to get so much further when you start stumbling your way through it than you are that reading another book about it. And I say this coming from the place of the person that has more certifications than I can even rattle off, because I love learning. But you have to put it into practice, or all you're doing is, swimming in your own studies. You're not feeling it.
Yeah, that's so well said. And like, a lot of the questions that I'll get, which I'm sure you frequently get, so we can talk about this as well, as like, oh, well, I don't have like the mental capacity to meditate. Or people will say like, I can't sit still for that long. And what are some of those, when you get questions like that, or somebody has that type of reply, what do you say back normally?
Yeah, I say that it's a muscle. It's like we're going to the spiritual gym, and you have to build that muscle, and you have to start flexing it. And it's like the same thing as running a 5K or a 10K. If you're not running right now and you go out to run a 5K, you're going to fall over in like 5 minutes. You're not going to be able to run the 5K. But if you start training and you start moving towards that goal and practicing a little bit every day, by the end of the month, you're going to be running a 5K, and your spirit and your ability to meditate and your ability to hear that inner wisdom or seek that quietness within you is a practice. And that's why they call it that. It's because you have to practice over and over and over. And usually it doesn't look like what we think it is going to look like. It doesn't look like we're sitting up on a mountaintop and we're zen and the sky is behind us and the river is in front of us and the birds are chirping. That's not what it looks like.
Right.
No, I mean, there's some magical times when you like plan that trip and you go and you get to do that. But most of the time you're building it into your everyday life. And the best way to do that is in moments where you already have a consistent practice of doing something else. And we can talk more about that kind of stuff, like how to build it in if you want. But just to deeply know that it is a muscle that you have to strengthen, just like anything else. Right. Yeah. We're all strengthening our ability to like stare at our phone, and we have like hardwired ourselves to kind of check our phone every 10 minutes. You know, if you hardwire yourself to take a deep breath every 10 minutes, like your life will drastically change.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm like, it's so good that you said that too, because a lot of the times I'll tell our listeners, like, put a time limit on your phone. You know, like mental health and social media is so important for us because it's literally all in one. A lot of our listeners are online business owners as well. So, you know, your literal entire desk is in your pocket all the time. It's
all the time. And that's why as a business owner, building in those patterns so that you can disconnect, like when you disconnect for the weekend, that is like amazing. And it's a gift, and you need to do it. Right. And it helps you dive in for the week, but all of those things, but that's creating a practice that helps your mental health, and spirituality helps your mental health. Creating that connection helps your mental health. It actually helps every aspect of your life. And until you start building that muscle, you won't begin to see that. And it's the synchronicities that start to happen that are, you know, that people will say, oh, it's the first thing that they doubt. It's the first thing that they're like, gosh, I can't believe that I really, you know, I had hoped that would happen. And then it happened. And you're like, how did that happen? Well, because you put it into the universe, you believe that maybe it could, but then you surrendered it over because there was a part of you that's like, well, I don't know. And then it just comes, you know, and that's what starts happening when you open up to your spirit and you start practicing, and all of these doors start opening that you never dreamed possible because you started building that muscle. So getting through the moment where your mind is really loud, like you just may have a loud mind while you meditate, and you have to learn how to do it in a way that works for you. There's all these different styles, all these different ways. So exploring more than one way is really helpful too. But knowing like you're going to the gym, like you got to do it. You've got to make time for it. And like you said, put an alarm on your phone, like build it in.
That's great. And would you recommend that, like those types of alarms, if like people are just getting started on how to work it into their everyday? Or do you recommend like long period of time for meditation, or is it okay to do bite size?
No, I never recommend long time. No, not at all. One of the first things I say to do is and this is somewhat a bit with like mindset too, is just getting into the practice of doing it. So one of the best times to do it is right after you brush your teeth, because you're going to brush your teeth. Well, I hope you're going to brush your teeth every morning, right? So if you want to create a new pattern in your life, you want to create something new, you build it on something that's already on automatic pilot. So brushing our teeth is something that is typically already on automatic pilot. So I tell people, you know, that is a great time when you put your toothbrush down, just take a few deep breaths. Like this could be 5 deep breaths, and just center, you know, I'll use that word, just center yourself for the morning. And then you can set an intention right then, like, how do I want my day to be today? Right. And just doing something very little like that, and all day long reminding yourself, oh, I wanted my day to go and push me towards that, moving me away from it. And this is building it into of building a little bit of breath work and a little bit of intention into your practice. creating a practice, and it takes less than 5 minutes.
I love that because it does not take that long, you know, like
it doesn't have to. And I think we get stuck in the idea that we have to sit for 45 minutes to meditate, and then we try to start with like some crazy long time period, and really it's just creating the time and the space for it and doing it in an already on autopilot moment of your day. And I would say start small, you know, and those little intentions, that is like, it's like a little meditation for yourself, like doing that little breath work. So they set the intention and they set the direction for your day, and it allows you to create that a spiritual practice in a really simple, unique way, but it also allows you to create a new pattern, right? And when you create a new pattern in your life, your brain starts working a little bit differently, and you can start thinking about things like, or is what I'm doing right now supporting my morning's goal? And if it's not, how do I make a decision to get closer to that? Am I moving closer or further away? And there's a whole bunch of other techniques that I recommend, like when I'm working with people one-on-one, given their specific situation, what are their goals? What are they working on? What's doable for them? But usually, you know, starting with like the breath work with brushing your teeth, it's already built in. Taking showers, that's another fun time to work within your energy field. And I go into a whole bunch of topics, how to do that. It's all at the beginning, it's all about building it into things that you're naturally doing. And then it starts to skyrocket from there, because what you experience is, I'm going to go out and say, is so profound that you end up wanting to build that muscle more. And you end up trusting like, wow, there is something bigger happening. Wow, like these coincidences are not coincidences. Like they are really signs. There are no coincidences. Everything is moving you away from or towards what you really want to create in your life. And because we have free will, it's a choice. So we're always making a decision, because we are, you know, in the physical as much as we are spiritual. We are here in the physical, learning these physical lessons. And that's the part that I love working on with people, is like working on those lessons, working on those patterns, so that we can change our lives, and so that we can, you know, create the life that we are meant to live here. You know, that purpose-driven life. Like, you already know what it is. We already know what it is. It's just a matter of trusting our inner guidance system. And that's what I'm here to do. That's what I do every day, is I help people trust their inner guidance system and remember it, because it's there. And it's something that, unfortunately, as children, we're usually taught to not trust anymore. We're taught out of that education, and science, like neuroscientists will tell us, like, we have this innate understanding that we are connected to everything when we're children. And then by the time we're about 12, adolescence is when we start to push it down. Sometimes it's even earlier, depending on what your journey is. If you see spirits or something like that, you might shut it down a little bit earlier, because it can be scary. But for those of us that don't have that happen, that are just, natural energy readers, then we tend to turn that off around 12, 13. And that is, I'm not like pulling that out of nowhere. That's like neuroscience. Like, they have said, like, that's when we start to unlearn it, because other people start telling us it's not real. They start in this culture, not in all cultures, in this culture. And that's why, like, rites of passage are so important, because it's that ceremony that recognizes that your spirit is changing. And when you don't have that, it kind of leaves you untethered. There's all these different things that some of us aren't doing anymore. And it's so, so important. And science is now finally catching up. One of my favorite people to follow in this is Lisa Miller. She's a PhD neuroscientist, and she has a great podcast with Ritual. Her books are wonderful. And so if anyone's looking into the sciencey part of what is being explored, she is a wonderful resource. And she teaches at Columbia University. It's amazing what she's bringing to this spirituality movement.
Amazing. And we'll tag all of Ilia's information on how you can work with her, her Instagram, all of the good things below. And we'll also tag Lisa Miller if you guys are interested in that podcast. I'm going to listen to it today, actually, because I'm really excited to hear more about the spirituality and science, because it's so true. Like Ilia and I were speaking earlier before we hopped on about this topic. And the more you can create this separation, the more you may be allowed to free yourself quicker, if you can maybe change your perspective or your lens, as Ilia was mentioning, on the spirituality.
Yeah, because it's not this woo-woo thing that is outside of us. It's not this woo-woo thing that only you can go to one person for. It's not just that. You have that within you. And it's not outside of us. It becomes, like we were saying earlier, sometimes it feels magical and it feels like it's like this crazy thing, because it is that, but there's a greater reason why it exists. There's a greater understanding that now, thanks to, scientists like Lisa, we know is real, and we know it's true, and we know that we need it, and we know that it supports our mental health, and it helps us, relieves us from our trauma bonds. It relieves us from all of these experiences. We know through leaders like Brian Weiss, that past lives are real, that there is like an energetic connection that continues to move forward, and that these lessons continue to move forward with us until we learn them. And then when we learn them, we can break the pattern. We can, we can move beyond that. And our energy as a result vibrates at a different level when that happens. And we start seeing more of those synchronicities. We truly are our thoughts. What you think, your body, your brain, and your spirit believe. And that's all you're going to get back until you can see something bigger and brighter. That's the magic. When you can see it, you can create it.
Yeah. And it really does work, you guys.
It does. It's incredible. It's incredible.
It's wild. Like, I will share this little story, and then I want to let Ilia explain some of the ways that you can get in touch with her, because she is amazing. And like, seriously, if you guys don't get in touch with her, you're missing out, because she really knows what she's talking about. And I would like to mention, a lot of people in this space don't take this same approach. So if you do decide to go outside of this realm, but are interested, definitely feel like you can converse with us or be open to conversations, just because not everybody has the same approach, So
yeah. And I love that. I love answering questions. I will guide you and support you in any direction you need to go, whether it's with me, someone else. Like, there are so many different paths to your journey, and just choose one.
Yes, just go for it. Like Sean and I were talking about this, and he's actually in the process of maybe, switching his path career-wise. And it's something that he's been manifesting literally over the past 8 months. Just subconsciously, he'll say certain things like, oh, I'm really excited to work on, my next steps in my career. Like, we'll just say it when we're eating or something, even job searching. And then literally things just happen naturally. Recruiters are reaching out to him. Things start moving forward. He's getting his resume together. And then all of a sudden it will be, eventually he'll have a job offer in his hands, and he'll be saying, I can't believe I'm here. Feels like a week ago we were just talking about this, and it's actually happening. And
that's all part of it. That's all part of changing. It's changing his vibration. It's letting the universe know that this is what he's seeking. This is what he wants, and then he's open for it. And the universe is like, oh, okay, well, you just cleared the space for it. Let me send it your way. And then it just keeps happening. And you just keep following the breadcrumbs and keep saying it out loud. When you say it to a trusted person. Not everyone needs to know, and not everyone is meant to be trusted with your innermost desires. You don't have to share it with everyone, but you share it with the people that support your growth, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
It's almost like you combine energies levels.
Yes.
You're saying, if you meet on the same level, it's then they're manifesting it with you, and there's power behind that. Yeah. Oh my God.
That's why, having that team, whether it's a personal team behind you, whether it's, a community of other business owners that get the highs and lows of owning a business and can support you through all of that, it's having those braver conversations and seeing it. And then it all gets clear. Yeah. And you just keep going and going and going. It's amazing.
It's amazing. I'm like so excited about this episode. I just loved having you on. Thank you so much. This was amazing. And tell our listeners, like, what do you have going on? Is there a way that they can work with you, in the next few months, or can they just check it out on your Instagram page too to stay like updated with everything?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Instagram always. You can find me at spiritually.curious. I have noticed there's a few pages that are popping up, so make sure it's me. But that's probably the most active place where you hear about what's going on. But what I always offer during the month is I do VIP days, which are full day experiences to really like go deep and break your patterns. And with that, we do past life regression therapy, we do cord cutting, we do visioning, we do calling your spirit back. So if you have questions about that, you can always email me, you can DM me, all the ways get to me. My website, you can do spirituallycurious.com or iliastranko.com. It leads you to the same place, and I've got some self-guided courses about developing your clairs on there as well. And then working with me one-on-one is always an option in 3.5 month long packages is what I offer. Awesome. That's like a super deep dive. That's like, we are going through it all. What are your visions? We're breaking ties, we're doing it all during those 3.5 months. So that's a really deep dive to get you to the other side of your transformation. But those are the ways you find me, and those are the ways you work with me. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And we'll have all the links that we mentioned below for the podcast, ways that you can get in touch with Ilia. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode. This was so fun. Is honestly one of my favorites. So I cannot wait for this to launch. If you guys love the show, let me know. Tag us on Instagram, screenshot us. Let us know if you liked it. Ilia and you can tag us both. If not, then I'll reshare it and tag her so she knows. But thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to The End in Mind. I would like to remind you all, if you haven't yet reached out to me on Instagram, we are at Meraki_media_management. It will be in our show notes as well. If you would like to reach out to me, we always offer free coaching through Instagram based around our Instagram training and our business Instagram practices. If you need any type of support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me there. And we also offer several different types of consulting and training packages if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth tips. So thank you all for listening in, and of course, I want you all to keep the end in mind as you continue with your day and or work week. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time.